Hello everyone, I welcome you in the virtual classroom of managerial economics. We are discussing the second part of our first unit, that is demand forecasting, and in that we are discussing the methods of demand forecasting. In this lecture, we are moving towards the last category of this method, which are statistical methods. Under statistical methods, again, there are three methods, which are trend projection method, regression method, and simultaneous equation method. And again, trend projection method is divided into three categories, which are graphical method, least square method, and box Jenkins method. Now let us discuss in detail. The first method is trend projection method. The name itself suggests what is a trend. Trend simply means whatever has happened in the past that may continue in a present time and that will continue in a future period of time. So that is called a trend. Generally, the word trend is associated with the fashion. Generally, we term that what trend is going on for a particular cloth. Yes or no? So trend means whatever is going on in a market is known as a trend. And when we are predicting in advance that what trend will come, then it is known as a projection. Projection simply means prediction. So which trend will come in a market when you are predicting in advance, then it is known as a trend projection method. See what is written here. Large amount of reliable data is required for forecasting. Definitely, when you want to predict the trend, then you must have a huge amount of past data on the basis of which you can predict that what can be a possible future. So a reliable data is required. Then secondly, in addition to this method assumes that the factors such as sales and demand responsible for past trends would remain same in a future in the same manner and to the same extent as they did in the past while determining the variable's magnitude and direction. This second point simply means history repeat itself. Whatever has happened in a past in the same numerical position, everything will happen in a future. Say for example, if in a year 1 there is a demand 10,000, and in second year if there is a demand 20,000, then in future also in first year there will be demand of 10,000 and in second year there will be demand of 10,000, means there will be double demand in a second year. So what has happened in a past in a same manner will happen in a future to the same extent. See what is written here. Same in a future, same manner, and to the same extent. See, whatever was the relation, the same relation will continue. If demand has increased in a past, means demand will increase in a future. If demand has increased double at a rate, then demand will increase in a future at a double rate. If there is a relationship of demand with the advertisement campaign and sales, then in future also the demand has a relation with only advertisement. So the total history will repeat itself as it is manner in a future. So this is what an assumption of this method that history repeat itself. Then thirdly, it is written here, a long-standing firm can obtain such data from its department such as sales and the books of accounts, while a new firm can obtain data from the old firms operating in a same industry. See, if you are existing in a market for a longer period of time, then definitely you are having a past. So from your past experience you can predict your future. You must have the past data in your sales department, that how many units you had sold in a past. On that basis you can predict for a future. If you don't have units sold, then you can refer your books of account. There you will get the figure of the sales, how much sales you have recorded in a past year. So from your books of account, from accounting department or from a marketing department, the data will be available if you are a old firm in a market. But suppose you are a new firm, then definitely you are not having any past in a market, then you need to be dependent on the data of a firm which is already existing in a market. So from other companies' data, you will predict the trend that may come in a future. The trend projection methods are categorized in a three category, which are graphical method, least square method, and box Jenkins method. So what is graphical method? This is the old age method that you have learned in your 11th standard as well, 11th standard statistics. So what is written here? It is the most simple statistical method in which the annual sales data are plotted on a graph. See, what you need to do, only this thing. Annual sales data are plotted on a graph and a line is drawn through these plotted points. A freehand line is drawn in such a way that the distance between points and the line is minimum. Means you need to draw two lines. One line which will connect all the dots, and second line which will be passing through the nearest to all the points. If you want to have a diagram, then it can be shown like this. See, here we are having a trend line. In x-axis we have written period, you can consider as a year, and on y-axis there is a sales. In first year there is a sale of 20 points, in second year there is a sale of 30 points, in third year there is a sale of 50 points. So a blue line shows that is connected to all the points, but this blue line cannot show you which trend will come in a future. You can predict the trend from this black line. The simple straight black line is drawn which is passing through all the points. This black line may not connect single dot, but it is nearest to all the points. So it will show the average trend of the past, and on the basis of this average trend you are predicting in a future. See, we are having data up to the 10th period, and suppose you want to predict for 11th period, then your sales can be, that is 100 point. On the basis of this extended black line, we can predict that in future the sales will be 100 points. So this is what a trend projection method. The past data of sale is recorded and it is plotted on a graph. Then two lines are drawn, one which connects all the points and one which passes nearest to all the points to show an average trend. And on the basis of this straight line, we can predict the period, we can predict the demand for a future period of time. Then it is written, under this method, it is assumed that future sales will assume the same trend as followed by the past sales record. See, we have just extended this line like this, but it doesn't mean that in future also the line will behave like this. From future, in future the trend may be increasing, trend may be decreasing, or it may go straightward. So there are three chances, whether there will be like this, or there can be like this, or it will be straight as like a past. But it is an assumption that there will be a constant trend in a future, means there will be no upward and no downgradation. The same line will be extended in a future. Then, although the graphical method is simple and inexpensive, see, this is the merit. This method is simple and this method is inexpensive. Why this method is simple? Because even how to plot a graph, that we have learned in a 5th standard as well. So we can assume that even a person with a moderate education can use this method, and this method is inexpensive. Why? Because collection of data, it will be available within a form. You are not incurring any kind of cost for collection of data. You are not hiring researcher. Everything is available within a form. So a manager with a moderate skill also, he can use this method. So this method is inexpensive. Then it it is not considered as reliable. See, this is the disadvantage, that this method is not reliable. See, why this method is not reliable? As I have told you that in future trend may go like this and trend may go like this, but we are assuming that trend will continue like this only. So this is not the correct way to predict about a future. So to this extent we can say that this method is not reliable. This is because the extension of a trend line may involve subjectivity and personal bias of a researcher. Definitely. See what is written here. How to extend the line, it depends on a subjectivity, depends on a person who is drawing a line. Say for example that we have drawn black line like this, then we can all other researcher may draw black line like this as well. So there will be a same manner, but there will be a difference in the figure. In future, if you predict about 11th year, then there will be 80 point of cells. Why? Because our line, according to the second researcher, the line shows that there will be 80 points. Now if you hire another person, he can also draw like line like this, because there is no hard and fast rule that your line must connect all the dots. You need to choose one line which is nearest to all the point. So in that direction, in that criteria, you can draw any of the line. So from one person to another person, this line will differ, and as line differs, the trend predicted will also differ. So this method is suffering from the subjectivity and personal bias. So there are three disadvantages: that this method is not reliable, this method suffers from subjectivity, and this method suffers from personal bias. Though there are two advantages, that these methods are simple, this method is simple, and this method is inexpensive. So this is all about graphical method. Now let us see the second method under trend projection method, that is least square method. The form of trend equation that can be fitted to the time series data can be determined either by plotting a sales data or trying different forms of equation that best fits the data. Once the data is plotted, it shows several trends. The most common types of trend equations are linear trend and exponential trend. See how this least square method differs from the graphical method. In graphical method, we are just focusing on a sales data of a past year, means no any other factors we are considering, like advertisement campaign we are not considering, then price of the product we are not considering, then competitors price we are not considering, though each and every factor is having impact, influence on our demand. So this limitation we are overcoming in a least square method. In least square method, we are not only focusing on a sales data, rather we are forming an equation. Say for example, you have heard about the equation like ax plus by. So what is a kind of equation? That a is a constant and b is also a constant, where we can consider, where we can establish a relation between two variables. If there are three factors or three variables, you can add another variable like cz also. So after forming an equation, we will collect the data, and that data will be plotted on a graph. So here also we are using graph, but here we are considering all the factors. So to that extent, graphical method and least square method are differs from each other. Now as I told you earlier that in least square method we are using the formula, that is an equation. So that is written here. different forms of equation that best fits the data is formed and is plotted on a diagram. Now, according to the equation, this least square method has a two type, that is linear trend and exponential trend. Now, let us understand what is linear trend and exponential trend. Linear trend, when the time series data reveals rising or linear trend. Rising means a demand is constantly increasing, or a demand is a function of any particular number like multiplied by 2 or multiplied by 3. See, when this will be constant, there will be either constant rise or there will be like GP in a geometric progression. If your cells is increasing, then we are using this linear trend. Then our equation can be like S is equal to A plus BT, where S is equal to annual cells, T is equal to time, we can consider years and months as well, and A and B are constants. See, after putting the data in this formula, in this equation, we can get the amount of cells figure. Now let us see what is exponential trend. The exponential trend is used when the data reveal that the total cells have increased over the past year at an increasing rate or at a constant rate per unit time. See, one similarity is there between exponential trend and a linear trend, that data shows an increase. But what is the difference? In linear trend, data increases, the cells increases at a linear trend, in a linear trend, whereas in exponential trend, the cells increasing at a constant rate per unit. So when your cells is increasing at a constant rate, we are using exponential trend. So this is all about the least square method. Now we are moving towards the third method under trend projection method, that is Box-Jenkins method. For short-term prediction and projections, this method is used. Generally, the graphical method and least square method is useful for prediction of 1 year or 2 year, but Box-Jenkins method is useful for the prediction on a monthly basis for 1 month or up to 6 months. This method is often used with the stationary time series sales data. See, what kind of data this method is using? This uses stationary time series data. What is a stationary time series data? That is written here. A stationary time series data is the one which does not reveal a long-term trend. In other words, Box-Jenkins method is used when the time series data reveal monthly or a seasonal variation that reappear with some degree of regularity. See, whatever the in past, whatever the cells are there, we are using the same data like a graphical method only. But what the difference in this Box-Jenkins method is that in earlier method we used to predict on a yearly basis, but here we used to predict on a monthly basis. That is what written here. Data reveals monthly or a seasonal variations. So for short-term prediction, Box-Jenkins method is useful. Then how to use this method? It is as accordingly graphical method only. Now the second method under statistical methods are regression method. This word is not new to you, that you are learning in your business statistics, and you are already learning the practical problems of regression. And in regression you have also encountered the sums which are related to demand forecasting. But as if we are talking about our subject, then here you just need to write the theory or basic idea about regression only. In regression method, the demand function for a product is estimated where demand is dependent variable and variables that determine the demand are independent variable. See, when you are solving the sum, you must have a two column, two figure. in which one data is given and second you need to get the answer. See what is written here, demand is a dependent variable. Yes, definitely. Say for example, if we take a relationship between price and demand, then price is an independent variable because it will be decided by form. But demand will be decided on the basis of price. So demand will be considered as a dependent variable. So in regression method, demand will be always a dependent variable, but independent variable may change. Independent variables may be price. Independent variable may be the price of competitor's product, it may be the consumer's income level, it may be the advertisement campaign and the like. On any factor, demand can be dependent. If only one variable affect the demand, then it is called single variable demand function. See, in regression method, you used to prepare one of the equation and you will solve that equation. If in the equation you are using only one factor, then it is known as a single variable demand function. Thus, simple regression techniques are used. If demand is affected by many variables, then it is called multivariable demand function. Therefore, in such a case, multiple regression is used. If you are forming an equation which is constituting so many factors, then we are using multiple regression method. Now, as you are solving the sum of this regression method, you must be knowing that it is not that much easy like a graphical method. So we can say that this method is complex, which cannot be used by any person, anyone on a randomly basis who is not having a knowledge of statistics. So this is the disadvantage, that this method is complex. Another disadvantage you may consider that for collection of the data of independent variable, you need to be dependent on some other methods. So regression method alone cannot be used. You need to be dependent on some other methods. After using other methods, you can use regression method. Then another disadvantage you can take is this method is expensive. Why? Because you need to collect the data, and again, to use the regression method is not a child's play. Any manager cannot use it. They need to hire a person who can be a statistician or a person who is having enough knowledge of statistics. So that hired person will do a forecasting on your behalf, and you need to pay the salary to this person. So to that extent, we can say that this method is expensive and complex. Now, the last method of demand forecasting is simultaneous equations method. See, equation is not new to you. We are solving equations since 5th standard as well, and in 10th standard we have discussed in detail, we have learned in detail how to solve the different equations, and students are enjoying solving the equations when they are given only two equations. It is a child's play for the students to solve two equations. Let me give the example like this. Say for example, if we consider only two equations, which are this: x plus 4y is equal to 20 and 2x plus 4y is equal to 40. Now to solve this equation is very much easier task. You can get the value of x and y, and by that way you can predict for a future. But what is the complexity lies in this method is there are not only two variables, there are n number of equations. I have written only 4, but we can assume that how so many factors affecting demands are there, that many equations can be framed. See, now you just imagine to solve this two equation is easier task, but to solve this 4 equation together, where we are having another variable that is z, then we are having again another variable that is a. So this will includes the complexity in a equation. Now that is why this method is known as a simultaneous equation. So many equations together we are solving. That is why we are terming it as a simultaneous equation. For developing a complete model, endogenous and exogenous variables are determined first. Now, these are the two new words, endogenous variables and exogenous variables. What is endogenous variables? All those variables which are internally available, which are available within four walls of organization, that are known as endogenous variables. And what are exogenous variables? Those variables which are existing outside the organization, they are known as exogenous variables. So demand is a function of both internal variables and external variables. Endogenous variable you can also consider as controllable variables, and exogenous are non-controllable variables. Uh, Again, if you want to use another terms, then endogenous variables are dependent variables and exogenous variables are independent variable. Why they are independent? Because we don't have control over it, and in which direction the external factors are running, on same way we need to be dependent on a external variable. That is why internal will be considered as a dependent variable. Then secondly, it is written here, necessary data on both exogenous and endogenous variables are collected. Sometimes data is not available in required form. Thus, it is needed to be adjusted into model. See, we need to collect the data of endogenous variable and exogenous variable. Take the example that the shape of a product is an internal variable, but the consumer's income is an exogenous variable. Yes or no? So we need to collect the data of internal factor as well as external factor. See, the collection of the internal variable will be quite easy because it will be within the organization, but to collect the data of external variable is a quite difficult task because it is out of the control of organization, and again it is outside the organization. So difficulty lies in collection of the data. So here, for collection of data, simultaneous equation depends on another method. Getting it? Like a regression method, simultaneous equation has to be dependent on another method for collection of data. You can consider it as one of the disadvantage of simultaneous equation. After the development of necessary data, the model is estimated through some appropriate method. Finally, the model is solved for each endogenous variable in terms of exogenous variable. The prediction is finally made. Means the crux of this last line is you need to solve these four equations together. You can get the value of x, y, z and a. So after getting this value of x, y, z and a, out of these four variables we can assume that two are endogenous and two are exogenous. So each endogenous variable is predicted in terms of exogenous variable, and finally the predictions will be made. Now from the discussion of this method, you yourself come to a conclusion that this method is very much complex one. Then this method will be very much time consuming. I have just given you the four equations. The equation can be 10 or 15. So if the number of equations will keep on increasing, then that much time will be taken in solving the equation. So this method will be time consuming. Again, this is not not a task that any manager can do. They need to hire the researcher or statistician. So this method is expensive and this method is complex one. Even the interpretation of this method is sometimes not understood by a common people. So this is all about the statistical method of demand forecasting. In statistical methods, we have seen three methods, which are trend projection method, regression method and simultaneous equation. And in trend, again we have seen three methods, which are graphical method, least square method, and Box-Jenkins method. So by this way, we are completing the statistical method of this unit, and by this way we are successfully completing the first unit, the total first unit we are completing in this lecture.